So Christianity and Islam are really not so different when you understand the mysticism which entwines all of them. Now, if you look at the Quran, there's a very interesting little story about Angel Gabriel, or Jibril as he's called in the Quran, and the angel won't enter the house, and he prays and says, why have you not entered? You've not came and you said you would. And then they find a puppy under the bed, and because of the puppy, he says, the angel can't enter my house when there is a puppy here. Now, the puppy represents a very small, innocent aspect of your animal nature. Dogs got a bad rap in that part of the world and was often used to depict and define the lower nature of man. Or as the lion is used to describe the beastly ego in Christianity, so the dog was used. Same as with the people of the cave. There are 7 people who go into the cave, going into meditation, the 7 energy centers within yourself. You go in and you find the union, and you leave your dog outside, you leave your animal nature outside. The angel couldn't come in because there was just this little innocent, tiny part of the animal nature present, and he can't enter the house. This is exactly the same as the Passover, and Jesus saying, make sure that there's no leaven in the house. Prepare for the Passover in that way. Because if there's even a little bit of leaven, the leaven is the puppy. If there's a little bit of leaven in your house, then the sin will rise. The corrupt aspect of your nature, your lower nature, will rise within you. And the presence, the true divinity of God and his angels, which come on those angles of light and photons, which give you the messages and the guidance from God to get your life to where it needs to be, can't enter within you when you are polluted in that way, because your temple is not clean enough. So just as you have to take all of the yeast out of your house and have no leaven, so as when you have the leaven, it rises, it represents taking out all of your lower nature. So too in Islam, you can't have even a tiny puppy under your bed and the angel can't come in, because even a little bit of your lower nature will block the word of God, because you will be tempted away from it. And we just need to start being mature, guys, and understand that, of course, great spiritual teachers weren't telling us to keep certain food ingredients out of our house, and they weren't telling us that angels don't come in because of a cute, innocent puppy dog. And either side of the fence, people are not understanding it. Hey guys, I missed the start of Ramadan because of my videos, and I did want to make one about it. And today I was reading a little article, and this article was written from a Christian perspective of Ramadan. And I was so infuriated reading it. I was with Fritzy in the garden, and it was just so horrid the way these people were writing, and all they were saying was that Ramadan was an opportunity for Christians to pray for Muslims, as if they know for certain that they are 100% correct and that Muslim people are done for because they are not praying or using the same symbology, using the same words, using the same images to define the experience and the presence of God. Now, the problem you have here is people have lost complete connectivity to what is being said. Now, you have these persons in history, and they find themselves at a union and a oneness with God. And then they share great teachings to try their very best to show you how to get to that union of oneness with God. Now, Alan Watts said something wonderful, and I love the way he described this, that life is like a slippery fish, and if you try to catch the fish with your hands, it slips all over the place, and that is the experience and the point of life. Now, if you try to explain the exhilaration of trying to catch that slippery fish by throwing a net over it and segmenting with calculus each individual section of the fish, then that is what we do with our minds with the present moment. We throw our net, our mind, over the present moment, and we try to describe it. And these great teachers have tried to lead people all throughout history to the union and the oneness with God. But what's happened is the instructions, the stories, the metaphors, the allegories, the myths, and everything else that have been put together to convey this deep, powerful, profound, indescribable truth have become the point of focus. People focus on the manual of how to awaken to the oneness of God instead of actually doing it. And you see this with one of the greatest minds for Gnostic scholarship on the planet is an atheist. And he didn't start as an atheist, but it's because he doesn't practice Gnosticism. He studies it, he reads it. He doesn't do it. He doesn't fast. He doesn't seek. And thus he's become atheist due to the fact that he's using these texts in a completely wrong way. So even when your life is absorbed in these teachings, if you don't perceive what they are pointing you toward, then you're always going to end up clambering around and having the situations we have on the planet with our religions. Now, the truth of the matter is there's no difference in the core teachings of both of these books. Now, I don't like to give myself a label. I find it very difficult. And the reason being is that if you took me to do a presentation on mysticism in a Christian crowd, I could show them what Christian mysticism points you towards as finding a union with God. But I could also show it to an Islamic crowd using their text as well, which breaks down a barrier because you're not worshipping Muhammad, you're not worshipping Ali, you're not worshipping Jesus. You're finding your union with God. And as I've said before, I know from experience, not from reading books, but from experience, from giving my life to God, from serving, that when I pray on behalf of the children, the God who hears us sends people of all faiths and all beliefs. So there's only one God up there. He doesn't define the images and the words that we create with our carnal minds as having any relevance. It's the purity and song of the heart. It's the nature, the Christ nature within a person. Now, if you can do a little exercise for me, pull yourself right back to the point where there are no humans on the planet. Everything was still going on. The rivers were still running, the plants were growing and blooming, the animals were still scuffling around, the birds were singing. Humans weren't here. Was God present? Absolutely. God was present in all of that creative force that was going on around us. Humans then come up with concepts of how to define and describe this force, this universal loving force that we deem to call God. Other cultures might call it the infinite consciousness, the zero not zero, whatever they want to call it, Pachamama, Allah. People started to create stories, started to create language and ways to try and define God. But all along, before human perceptions and ideas rose up of us trying to describe God, God was present and it was happening. And that happening that is God, that happened before human thoughts even started labeling it and creating language and segmenting and calculating and defining and describing what was happening, then the experience of God, the present moment, the ever-present moment, take no thought for your life, as Jesus said, then that experience was always going on. And if you pull back to humans and you start to go just slowly forward, you see that we've created these stories to define and describe God. But all of these great teachers were trying to tell you how to get back to that point of experiencing consciousness before human beings had labels and descriptions and concepts. Before there was a Christian concept, before there was an Islamic concept, before there was a Buddhist concept, before there was a Hindu concept, there was still the presence and the experience of God. And all of these labels and images have been added by humans to try and fit in with their culture how we can reach and define and make an image of God that works for us. Now, if you understand mysticism, you can then see that all of this nonsense of, for instance, this article I read, Christians should pray for Muslims during Ramadan, as if they're doing something wrong and they need saving and helping, then This is just so messed up. It's so unbelievably messed up, because what people are not seeing is the actual union of what was being taught inside these religious scriptures and by these teachers. And that union is what's important here. If you ever want to get on with fixing this planet and creating a planet where people don't have to suffer as much as what they do, which is our goal, I believe, as a collective, then you really very much need people not to all believe the same thing, but to at least walk shoulder to shoulder and not bicker and argue with the nonsense of their mind. And Rumi, who was Islamic, said it wonderfully. And he said, as I've said many times, out beyond your ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field. And so long as people walk in that field, then we can see the restructuring of the planet. And we can see it in a way whereby we don't all have to believe the same thing, but we can have tolerance and belief and love for one another, regardless of the fact that we have this belief or that belief. And any person claiming a belief from God that does not have its foundations in love is not coming from the God that I know. And this is the only God worth serving, because it's the truest of true and the highest of highs. So if it's coming from a place of anger, malice, contempt, whatever it might be, this is not God. These are people coming from the carnal mind. All of those negative emotions live in the carnal mind, and the carnal mind is not enmity to the laws of God, as it is written in every single Holy Scripture and spoken by every single spiritual teacher and Messiah and Guru on the planet. So Christianity and Islam are really not so different when you understand the mysticism which entwines all of them. Now, if you look at the Quran, there's a very interesting little story about Angel Gabriel, or Jibril as he's called in the Quran, and the angel won't enter the house, and he prays and says, why have you not entered? You've not came and you said you would. And then they find a puppy under the bed, and because of the puppy, he says, the angel can't enter my house when there is a puppy here. Now, the puppy represents a very small, innocent aspect of your animal nature. Dogs got a bad rap in that part of the world and was often used to depict and define the lower nature of man. Or as the lion is used to describe the beastly ego in Christianity, so the dog was used. Same as with the people of the cave. There are 7 people who go into the cave, going into meditation, the 7 energy centers within yourself. You go in and you find the union, and you leave your dog outside, you leave your animal nature outside. The angel couldn't come in because there was just this little innocent, tiny part of the animal nature present, and he can't enter the house. This is exactly the same as the Passover, and Jesus saying, make sure that there's no leaven in the house. Prepare for the Passover in that way. Because if there's even a little bit of leaven, the leaven is the puppy. If there's a little bit of leaven in your house, then the sin will rise, the corrupt aspect of your nature, your lower nature, will rise within you. And the presence, the true divinity of God and his angels, which come on those angles of light and photons, which give you the messages and the guidance from God to get your life to where it needs to be, can't enter within you when you are polluted in that way, because your temple is not clean enough. So just as you have to take all of the yeast out of your house and have no leaven, so as when you have the leaven that rises, it represents taking out all of your lower nature. So too in Islam, you can't have even a tiny puppy under your bed and the angel can't come in, because even a little bit of your lower nature will block the word of God, because you will be tempted away from it. And we just need to start being mature, guys, and understand that, of course, great spiritual teachers weren't telling us to keep certain food ingredients out of our house, and they weren't telling us that angels don't come in because of a cute, innocent puppy dog. And either side of the fence, people are not understanding it. And because of it, we have these terrible conflicts and battles, be they verbally, be they abusive like this blog I read today, or be they physically with wars and so on, which we're seeing a lot of on the planet, or racism and etc. and prejudice and just all of this horrendous nonsense which comes from religious fundamentalism. And ultimately the problem is all those fundamentalists haven't experienced God. And it's like trying It's like you've walked upon a stunning, beautiful oasis, and that's what Muhammad did, that's what Jesus did, that's what Buddha did. They walk upon this oasis and it's indescribably beautiful and divine. It's indescribable. You can't even begin to explain to people what it's like. But then you have the task of trying to explain to them what it's like, but also trying to explain to them how to get there. But everybody who's reading the explanation of what it's like, and everyone who's reading the explanation of how to get there, all of a sudden start to believe that they can't get there because they are not holy enough, and this was only set aside for these chosen prophets or for this chosen Son of God. The truth of the matter is they were trying to lead you back to there. As Jesus said, we and the Father are one. And as Muhammad said, to know Allah is to know yourself is to know Allah. And there's no difference when you understand you, which the only place you can know you is from the present moment. By taking no thought for your life, then indeed you do know God. And until you understand the present moment, until you understand you're functioning inside the present moment, till you learn how to make sure there's no puppy under your bed and no leaven in your house, until you know how to get through your 7 energy centers and overcome your 5 senses. You know, the 7 energy centers are the chakras, as they're called in the Hindu faith, but it's a universal thing because us humans are not different. So our anatomy of prayer, our way of finding union with God is identical in every single culture, because when you meditate and pray, you will reach to God. It's as simple as that. And to do that, you raise through your 7 energy centers. Jesus Christ crucified on a cross in Golgotha, the place of the skull, after his 5 senses died, the 5 wounds representing the 5 senses. And then later in the book, it is only Christ who has sacrificed his 5 senses that can break the 7 seals upon the book of Revelation. Now, then you look at the Muslim side of things, the Islamic side of things, and Muhammad has to travel through the 7 heavens, riding I forget its name, but it's like a white horse, riding on pure understanding is what it means mystically. And when he gets through the 7 heavens, which are the 7 energy centers, he finally meets with Allah, and he speaks to Allah, and he makes an atonement that, and an agreement that they will pray 5 times a day, because you will surrender your 5 senses to God to raise through those 7 heavens, 7 energy centers. It's the same story, just different characters and different labels. And the thing is, once someone experiences that experience of God, of going through the 7 and sacrificing their 5 senses, then they find it very easy to understand this. But people who have never touched God in that way, they find it impossible to understand, because they don't believe that they can get to the oasis, whereas those of us who have touched it have seen the oasis. We know it's there, we know how to get there, but they can't believe that, because they believe that the only people who could get there were the prophets, or was the Son of God, etc., etc. So Ramadan is afoot. It's a time of seeking, fasting, praying, and it's a time of finding union and love with God if it's used correctly. And it's just part and parcel of our world that it's not really relevant. You know, as I say, to me, it's just, I have experience. I'm not sitting in a church. I'm not on my knees praying. I'm out serving God. I'm doing what was always asked by every single prophet or every single Messiah there was. They always asked you to serve. And when I started serving, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, pagans, everybody was answering our prayers. So that told me that when I was praying, God was coming down into all different people. Either that or there's multiple gods all being directed by a singular God, which just seems a bit ridiculous to me. Because the truth of the matter is, we know that humans have a lot of stuff to say and a lot of ways to describe things. But that's because you're describing something indescribable, and thus we end up with all these new profound different images, stories and labels, but they all mean exactly the same thing. As I say, the puppy under the bed is simply the leaven of Christianity. It's no different. It's the same universal truth. Conquer your lower nature, be a better person. And if it comes from anything other than love, and it's contempt and malice and anger, it's not of God. Of your carnal mind, and your first job is to get rid of the carnal mind, because you are told in every single religious spiritual text on the planet, every single ancient text on the planet, that is the number one thing that comes between humanity, and it's union and love of God. So, God bless, guys. And for everybody partaking in Ramadan, then I hope you have a blessed time of seeking and searching. God bless.